Today we'll be discussing garden pests and how every gardener will encounter either some kind of pest or disease in their food garden and how we can effectively deal with it. If you've been motivated by either myself or a fellow garden enthusiast to get your own food garden started and you have done so, I want to congratulate you. This venture will fill your life with beautiful, healthy, safe, homegrown foods that also encourages you to save money, or sometimes you'll be able to make a little extra change. So now that you have ventured on this path of being a home gardener, there are some truths that you will face. And one of those truths is pests and diseases. Every gardener has unfortunately dealt with some pest or disease. So how do you prepare yourself for that? And when it does happen, how do you not get disheartened? Well, the important thing is for you to know what your region likely has to deal with in terms of pests and diseases. So I encourage you, as you're embarking on this journey as a gardener, look at other gardeners in the area, ask them questions as pertaining what diseases or pests that they have to deal with regularly, and gear up yourself, prepare yourself before the problem. So what is garden pests and diseases? Well, in short, my answer to that is anything that can affect the life, the quality, and the productivity of your plant. There are many different types of pests and diseases that sometimes are localized. For instance, in my area, I deal with a lot of mealybug, aphids, ants. Sometimes my pets can be considered a pest. So it's important that you know what you have to deal with, and you can put mechanisms in place in order to cope with these pests. Being observant, being vigilant in your observance helps you as well. The plant usually gives you a sign that it is under some level of stress. The foliage, the stems, even the root system of the plant, you can see a lot of activity taking place at the root. You know that something is going on, and then you will have to take measures in order to help you combat whatever the plant is dealing with. So as mentioned before, I deal with a lot of ants, mealybug, and aphids. Mealybug is my number one problem in my food garden. My mealybug problem is not on the stems or on the foliage, but rather in the root system of my plant, which is rather difficult to diagnose as well to treat, as they're being in the soil. Sometimes what we're using as for pertaining organic pesticides do not have the same effect that being on top will have on these pests. So doing a lot of research as pertaining what pesticide works for the different pests that you're dealing with will help you to be effective in dealing with that problem. So for instance, like I mentioned before, the mealybug in the ground, I have been using the soap, the neem oil as pesticide, as an organic pesticide, and I have been losing that battle. I am back and forth deliberating whether to consort to a chemically based pesticide, but again, it's contradictory to what I really want to do, which is organic growing. So these are some of the things and the dilemmas that you're going to face as a gardener, especially if you're doing organic gardening, because there are some pests that really do not react to the essential oils and so on that we may be using in the garden. Birds is also another problem that many of us as gardeners have to face. Some of us have birds that target our fruit, whether ripe or unripe. Some of us, like myself, have birds who target our leaves and our stems. My cucumber or my squash plants, they are targeted by a bird that loves to eat the foliage. So I use this netting to cover them when they are young. The reason why I can only use it when the vine is young and not bearing any flowers is because, as you can notice, this netting will not allow for bees or butterflies to get to the flowers to pollinate them for me, which is what I want. So at some point in this game with these birds, I will lose a few stems and a bit of foliage to the birds, but my flowers will still be pollinated, and hopefully you can get a decent production. So I'm here to show you an example of when you're vigilant, it helps you to stay on top of a problem. Recently we had 9 days of non-stop rain, and that is, with our humidity in our climate, that is excellent breeding ground for the Mosaic virus. So if I could bring you a little closer, you will notice on these leaves you will see some white specks. Do you see that? That's the beginning stages of the Mosaic virus. And the organic way of dealing with this is spraying a milk solution on your plant. Sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't, but the important thing is to keep it under control. Yeah? As you would notice, I'm having some yellowing of my leaves, and this took place within 3 to 4 days. This is one of the signs of knowing that you have something going on in your soil. That's my mealybug problem that I'm having. On this side, to confirm that is mealybug that I'm dealing with, my kale is starting to suffer. It's not crisp, it's feeling a slightly wilted, and so I know that something is going on in the soil because I have no evidence of any pest or disease on my foliage. So guys, the important thing is, as a gardener, you have to diagnose your problem correctly in order to deal with the problem efficiently and quickly. So here's an example of an organic pesticide that I usually use. So I have my watering can, I have some dish soap, as well as some of my essential oils, nutmeg, as well as peppermint and neem. So I don't like to rest it on the ground, so I'm going to rest it up there. So the first thing you do, you put your water in your watering can. Well, I use a watering can because, like I mentioned, majority of my pest is in the soil, and so I drench my soil using my watering can. So I fill it up, getting everywhere. I fill up my watering can, and I eyeball this. There's no measurement. I really can't give you guys a measurement. But the thing is this soap is just to be able to allow the oils and the water to emulsify a little. So I'm gonna put in, say, about a teaspoon of this soap. I really don't like resting my stuff on the ground. Now I put a lot of peppermint because it's the cheaper of the essential oil, and it really does keep the bugs away a little. So say about a teaspoon of peppermint oil as well. Some nutmeg oil, about a half a teaspoon, not much, and neem oil, a teaspoon of neem oil. Oh, I'm done. I'm out of oil. Now I use the oils that I get at the pharmaceuticals because I find that these are stronger than the horticultural oils that you will get in the garden store. These are way more potent. I'm just going to use my hand because it's organic, and I'm going to stir this up. we're going to apply this to the planter box with the kale as well as the zucchini. Whatever little extras I probably will place in areas where I'm having a little trouble with the mealybug as well. So now I'm just going to throw this in the soil. My hand where I stirred the solution is quite tingly, so I could just imagine what it might do to those little critters in the soil. And you know, generously drench the soil with the solution. Ants don't like mint or peppermint, so it also helps with keeping the ants away. So generously drench your soil when you're having the problem and hope for the best. Keep reapplying it maybe every 3 days if it's a really severe infection that you're having. Yep. So that took about 3/4 of my can. I have some parsley here that's also being affected by the mealybug in the soil. So I'm going to just water this down and yeah, that's it. So that was to combat, the solution was to combat what's happening in the soil. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm starting to see the early signs of the Mosaic virus on my leaves, on my foliage. So what I have here is a solution of just milk and water. And I am just going to generously spray this solution on the underside and on the upper side of my foliage. I also mix a little neem oil in this solution in case I have aphids, you know, that it can stop the aphids from reproducing. And of course it's said that the neem oil stops the aphids from eating, so eventually they starve to death. So there you have it, guys. This is just some of the things that I will use organically to help me with my pests. There are some battles that I do lose. I do lose some plants, and that's just the reality of gardening. Some plants thrive, whereas some will die. The important thing is to keep trying until you find that one thing that will help you deal with pests and diseases in your garden. That's all for today, guys. Thanks for joining me. Have a wonderful day.